Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU podcast. I am Andre Hagberdian, joined as always by Paul Garrison. What's going on, Paul?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a football bye week. So it gives us a little bit of time of doing some interviews on some non-football sports. You know, in this episode, we've got an interview with head coach of San Diego State soccer, Ryan Hopkins. That's coming up a little bit later in this episode. We've got some baseball and basketball interviews also scheduled this week. That'll be coming your way shortly. But first, and I guess most pressing, is San Diego State football's game at Air Force. You were in Colorado Springs for the matchup. You know, you got some weather delays and lightning notices and things like that, but the game got going at normal kickoff. It was an ugly game, to say the least, for San Diego State, losing 49-10. Safe to say that it got a lot of emotions from fans and alumni, and in a negative way, obviously, not in a positive way. And it was just a game that got out of hand pretty quickly in that third quarter. As someone that was there, you know, what were, before we get into the positional grades, what was your overall, you know, kind of takeaway from that loss?
You know, it was a celebration. That's the best way I could put it for Air Force and for their fans. After the game, they have like this period of time where any of the fans can come onto the field for 45 minutes. And so it definitely has more of that, like there's like this honor code that is a part of, you know, that community there. And so it's just kind of everywhere. It's an interesting dynamic. But the whole field is just flooded with people. You know, a lot of the starters got to get out of the game. And so they didn't even really look beat up or like they had played a football game. Which I think that was probably the biggest takeaway from it is, you know, most years, both of these coaching staffs will talk about how this is the most physical game of the year for them. And I think that was true for San Diego State. I don't necessarily think that was true for Air Force. I think that San Diego State's success against the Falcons over the years has been because they've been able to match their physicality, which then allows their skill to take over. And it just wasn't the case. The Falcons were just better in every facet. It's not a fun place to do grades, but let's do it.
Yeah, definitely not looking forward to grades this week, but we're going to do what we do. Quarterback, sure. I'm going to go with a D here.
Yeah.
You know, I think after the last couple weeks, we talked a lot about Jalen Mayden's progression. You know, the Boise State game was a really good performance. I think we might have, other than those two fumbles, I think we thought he played a fantastic game.
Mm-hmm.
But then you come to Air Force, and I think it was a step or two back. After that first drive, a 17-play, 80-yard TD drive, 9 minutes, he threw a touchdown to Josh Nicholson. I think at that point you thought that this was going to be another great performance by Jalen Mayden, and everything went downhill after that. completed 13 passes for 122 yards. Got outpassed by Air Force. That's not even a passing team. Wasn't his usual self running the ball. There were several instances where on third down, he could have ran for a first down and he decided to throw and it went incomplete. I don't know if, at the end of last week, he was a little hobbled coming off of that touchdown run. I don't know if that was a factor in him, in his lack of running or lack of wanting to run on some of those plays. He threw a pick six, which, was a great play by Trey Taylor. I mean, it was a short pass over the middle, and I think he was blitzing and he stopped and kind of, put his arms up and caught the pass. So, I thought it was a step back for Jalen Mayden's, performance, against Air Force. What about you?
Yeah, I want to give a D because I think I'm going to be giving a lot of Fs later. But it was an F.
Yeah.
Like he you go and you're at a point where obviously the defense did not help the offense very much. His reluctance on those rollouts to run was just really surprising, especially the way that he was being defended. Air Force just they overloaded, and so they were great play calls. But then they got deep to kind of counter the surprise and the fact that they didn't have a lot of bodies in that direction. And there were just multiple times where he had the opportunity to pick up first downs and for whatever reason tried to, kind of thread the needle. He did do one run late. It went for 17 yards, and it was probably the shortest of what would have happened if he had done that more. Probably the most unique part of the experience. Actually, there's two more unique parts. We'll get to both of them, but the game is in the press box. It was right next to Coach Maddox's office, or where he does his stuff. And so, he's told us before that the reason he's not down on the sidelines is he gets a little bit too animated, he said. And so I got to hear that for the first time. And every play call he was, he was going, okay, it's going to be a dive or, a zone read or, all this stuff. The only time that you heard him scream during the entire time that the offense was on the field was there was one time where for whatever reason, Mayden decided to kind of throw a little bit across the field, not across the field, but back from where he was, to fullback true freshman Leo Kemp instead of, and it looked like he was like 2 steps away from the first down. And it was just an easy, and this was right after, if I'm remembering the part of the game correctly, this was right after the defense had just given up the first of the really long passes for a touchdown. So San Diego State, they go into half down 11, and at this point they're down 18, and you need a touchdown here. Was tempted in the recap to at the time, like in real time, like the game's over. Making that decision to throw to Leo Kemp instead of just walking across the first down marker, it essentially ended the game for the Aztecs. And of course, they kept scoring, so that didn't matter. But then I think they score again after they punt, and then he throws the interception for the pick six. So like at that crucial time where maybe they could turn it into a shootout, like the worst parts of his game popped up. So yeah, I think that it just wasn't what it needed to be. They need a lot more from Mayden, and I think that I think the most frustrating part about it is it was there. You know what I mean? The positive was that throw to Nicholson. It was a blitz. He saw it. He read it. He got it out quick and really made like what you would want a quarterback to make. And because he did that, like it allowed Nicholson's athleticism to take over, and the little space became no chance by the defender, but it was really set up by a really good throw by Mayden to not only read what Air Force was doing, but in the face of pressure, get the ball out, get it there accurately, know who was going to be lined up, one-on-one, and then it allowed Nicholson's explosion to take over. But, aside from that first drive, there just wasn't like a whole bunch of that. It's pretty clear that this offense goes as Mayden goes, and him not being good on last Saturday had that effect.
Moving on to running backs, I also had a D for them. Keenan Christian had some good moments, maybe his best game of the season rushing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
58 yards on 14 carries. He had a long of 22. Those first two drives, I think he really was starting to set the tone offensively. But total, Jalen Armstead didn't have a great game. That one score touchdown that we're talking about, the only touchdown of the game, that could have been derailed by Jalen Armstead's fumble that was blown dead and not reviewed, even though it was a clear fumble. I think the Aztecs benefited from that and took that rest of the drive and scored a touchdown. But it could have been his third fumble in 6 games, which just can't happen. And so I think they have to feel fortunate that that was not reviewed or overturned.
I don't think they could have.
But they didn't blow the whistle until
They
after
did.
the fumble was recovered.
Well, the guy on the first ref, he was pointing, like he stopped the forward momentum.
Oh, is that what they were saying?
Yeah, that's why it couldn't have been, because it's a judgment call on like when you stop
Okay.
from the
Yeah.
ball going forward. But
That makes sense. Okay, yeah, but I just didn't.
but it's the same point. You can't leave that up to any of those things. And I never saw a view to know if that was a good call or not, if that makes any sense. I don't know when the ball came out. But yeah, I agree with you.
He was moving. Even though he was wrapped up by multiple guys, he was still trying to move his feet forward. So, I mean, I think it could have gone either way, but he did. They stripped that ball pretty easily from him, despite the fact that you could say his forward progress was stopped. But I don't know. I think other than Keenan Christian, maybe in the first 2 drives of the game, the running backs didn't necessarily help. They didn't do much in the passing game. So yeah, I gave him a D as well.
All right, I had a C. I had a C for them. I thought Keenan Christian played well. Again, I definitely would love to see a breakout game for Christian or anybody who can really get a huge chunk. Right, he did have a 22-yard gain, which was good. But the reason I give him a C is because I think Air Force was daring Maiden to beat them.
Yeah.
They went in there saying we're going to make them one-dimensional, and we're going to try to put them in 3rd and longs, and then we're going to blitz, or we're going to try to attack that way. And so they got what they wanted. And I thought even despite them being the focal point of how Air Force was attacking San Diego State, I think they did fine. It's the same kind of broken record, but San Diego State's offense can score points when they make an explosive play. And, that explosive play didn't come, which would have obviously been huge, especially if it could have happened early. But at the same time, I didn't necessarily think they were like terrible or anything like that. I thought they just had an average game.
What'd you have for wide receivers?
Wide receivers, I had them at a D. It's always a challenge to go and to say like who's the blame for it, or where's that coming from. Obviously, I think aside from Josh Nicholson and the play that he had, that was like the best play, obviously. But I think aside from that explosive play, I didn't think there was very much else on the 61-yard field goal. They were able to pick up a 4th down reception by Breon Penny, who was not a great thrown ball, but he was able to go down and get it, which obviously incomplete there. History is not made, and like the 1A, can't wait to give later on. It wouldn't have been possible. So I thought that was a really clutch play, that's going to go down for, I think it was a 7-yard gain, one of his 2 receptions. But in a game that didn't have a lot of positives for SDSU, that turned in to be like the biggest positive that's completely wiped out if he doesn't, make that reception. And that's been Penny's kind of bugaboo before, is not making the tough catch. And he did, and he got it for a 1st down. But still just not enough separation. And, for all of the ideas that Maiden should have ran the ball, and I think that's 100% true. If his receivers make a couple of good catches, all of a sudden you're not saying that anymore. Balaam Brooks had an opportunity. Yes, he was covered, but he had an opportunity. They didn't hit a deep pass when Air Force was kind of daring them to. Air Force obviously had those passes that are created by everybody selling out against the run, but they also had some times where they just dropped back and you're one on one with a cornerback, and they still had great separation. And it was like,
Yeah.
well, you didn't really see that as much from San Diego State's receivers, and so I thought that they needed to play better. What about you?
I went with a D as well. It's a recurring theme on the offense. They had only 4 catches for on 11 targets. Outside of Nicholson's, run after catch to score the touchdown, they had absolutely no yak, or I think they had 2 yards of yak. This is one of those games that, like, I think the entire offense just wasn't clicking after that one touchdown drive. And it's, you can point the finger in many different ways, but I feel like it was an all around effort, to not move the ball, not get going. What about tight ends?
Tight ends, I had them at a C. But again, a lot of it has to do with the running game, and that I thought that San Diego State was strong enough up front that they were able to run the ball adequately to allow in a game that's going to have shortened possessions just because of the nature of how that game goes and how they possess the ball. So I gave them a C, C minus. Yeah, again, I think that they are Mark Redmond, I think, is San Diego State's best skill position player. He had an opportunity on a ball that was thrown behind him to make a catch. And again, it's thrown behind him. It's a tough play, but like if he makes that play, it just helps. It just helps. And so not enough plays were made. I did think that, after last week talking about Cam Harple and not being able to break tackles, he had a screen where he broke 2 tackles and turned something that, could have been something at the line of scrimmage or maybe a 1 or 2 yard gain and turned it into a decent game. I thought they were okay, but, the Aztecs clearly are going to need more from that if they're going to be successful.
Yeah, I'll agree with a C minus there. First play of the game, I think Mark Redmond caught a pass down the seam, 21 yards. I thought that was a sign of things to come, but we didn't see it again the rest of the
Right,
game.
right.
So I was gonna go with a D, but I think C minus is a fair grade there. Offensive line, I'm gonna go with a D as well to round out the offense. I mean, first drive of the game after that Redmond catch, they got to midfield. I think Keenan Kristen had a nice run, and then that drive got derailed by a holding penalty from Christian Jones. And so they ended up punting. It was a second drive. They scored the 80-yard touchdown drive. A couple other penalties. Maiden didn't get sacked. I think it was 1 sack. But he was, moving out of the pocket a lot, moving away from defenders. I think just to go along with the entire offense struggling after that touchdown drive, I think a D was appropriate.
I think it's hard because, again, going back to just the way I think the design of the offense, it was designed to get Maiden in space, and I thought it succeeded. There were a couple of pressures where they didn't bring a whole bunch of people and they just couldn't block guys up front. So I'm going to go C minus. Again, I thought that given the number of people that they were putting in the box, they did okay with the running game. I did think Maiden had opportunities to throw, especially, with the play action and all the things that were happening. It's one of those things like if they get some first downs, they're able to start moving the ball a little bit. They're able to start, they picked up a couple of fourth downs, 4th and 1s. That's what you want to see from the offensive line. So I didn't actually think it was a terrible performance. We're going to get to the defense here in a moment, but Standing Seats was never going to outscore them by, they were never going to score 49 points. Like that was just not going to happen, or 42 points, that the defense ended up giving up. So I don't know that the offense had a chance, to be honest with you, but at the same time, if they had possessed the ball more, Air Force has less opportunity. The score, kind of comes back down to it. I will say that I thought that, and I don't think you see this from San Diego State teams very much, but I thought after Air Force scored at to open up the third quarter, I thought there was like a deflating that took place with San Diego State, and I thought that they began to what people would describe as quitting, where they just weren't playing with the physicality and that they're expected to. I also thought that they recovered from that. And then they didn't score points on it. But I thought that the final drive that the offense had, where, it was 13 plays, 57 yards, it took up, 755, where they moved the ball and they got back to some of that identity of toughness and mental toughness and staying in it. And obviously the game was out of hand. But I thought that was a very positive sign, because I thought that if you just continue to get snowballing, I mean, at one point, just for my recap, I was looking up just because, like, what's the most points San Diego State has ever given up in this series, because it looked headed in that direction, and they didn't get
Yeah.
there. And they didn't get there because San Diego State did take up 755 in the fourth quarter and kind of bookended those two big drives to start the game and end the game. And I thought that was a welcome sign, because I think their mental toughness and their ability to face adversity has always been a hallmark, and I thought that it was lacking in the third quarter. But then again, to be down that much and then to respond there, I thought that was important, and I think it's something that they can build on going into the bye week. That I thought their offense, did well in being able to not just, like, it had snowballed. Coach Hoke post game called that play by Air Force, critical, and he said, it got out of hand very quickly, but it got out of hand, and then they became competitive again. For that one drive, they again, they didn't finish, but it wasn't drive before that was 3 and out. Drive before that was 1 and out. Drive before that was 3 and out. You know what I mean? And and then drive before that, you're getting the 8 plays and for the field goal. So I thought it was a very important drive that no one's going to care about, no one's going to remember, but just the feel of where San Diego State was and the feel in that stadium for them to respond the way that they did. Again, these are young men. I thought was what you want to see. They could have quit the entire game. They could have, and they didn't. And I thought that was a big positive overall for the offense, and maybe the idea that they can go into this bye week and figure some things out.
All right, moving to the defense. It's tough to give positional grades here, because in this kind of format, playing Air Force, you've got linebackers being defensive linemen, you got safeties playing linebackers, so it's a little bit muddied, but we'll still do what we do. I mean,
I think we don't have
line,
to. We can just give them all an F and say thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on the SDSU podcast.
Yeah, I mean, there are some F's here for sure. I mean, do you have separate grades for each of them?
Yeah, I mean, just because that's what we do. But I agree with you. How
different are the grades?
They're not very different. They're not extremely different. I would just say, starting with the defensive line, and again, we can zoom through it, bring it together. I think that when I went on the 760, they're nice enough to invite me every week. And John Schaefer asked a good question, as he always does, but just, like, is this really that crazy what's happened to them? And this is a conversation that we've had in writing a preview last year, and it maybe even doubly applied this year. San Diego State in 2021 had 3 All-Americans, and last year they had an All-American. And the college football is set up in such a way that San Diego State doesn't get to have All-Americans every year, and their ability to have an All-American, we should look at this, and I'll try to pull it up, but they don't have very many of these. And there's a reason for it because the halves in college football don't want to compete on the field. So they make sure that they rig the system off the field to only have to compete with each other on the field. You know, it's a cartel that way. Uh, and we were talking about this, like Cameron Thomas does not come around San Diego State very often. And he's a
Yeah.
two-star recruit, local guy. I mean, you know why, right? He had no weight, all that kind of stuff. And he turns in to a third round NFL pick who's like starting and playing well for the Cardinals, or he's playing well for the Cardinals. I'm not 100% sure where he's at with the rotation, but that guy doesn't pop up very often. Dan Bellinger doesn't pop up very often. Matt Ariza doesn't pop up very often. For his lack of maybe like professional success, although he's still hanging around, you know, William Dunkel does not pop up. I mean, that guy was a difference maker. But then you also, you can go into those players. Zach Thomas doesn't come around very as often, and it's just the way that it is. I mean, if San Diego State could be a perennial top 25 team, which I think you could argue the last 4 weeks, that's the only thing that it showed is that San Diego State's not a top 25 team because they've gotten beat badly by all teams that are on the brink, except for the one game that they should have won, which is another team that is not on the brink of the top 25, but all the other teams are. And so they're not close to that range. That's for sure. Now, every other team that wasn't close to a top 25 team, with Ohio being the exception, they've competed with. But anyway, the point of all of that to say that the defensive line not performing very good when you were counting on guys who could barely sniff the field in 2021 in Garrett Fountain, who was a rotation guy last year, but that was it. And you're replacing so many guys over the last two. It's not really surprising that they kind of pushed around by them. But that said, I thought of all the units that played well, it was the defensive line. So I'm not giving them an F. They're actually going to get a C from me. The dive, yes. The dive was, did they take their average? No. But did they get 7 yards of carry? Which is, everywhere else they did. Everywhere else in the defense, it was huge gaps. But I didn't think that, the dive, as time went on and the game got out of hand, they used it more and started getting a little bit more and stuff like that. But I thought they did fine on the dive. I did not think that that's what ruined them. I didn't think that they were getting blown off the ball. Like you just didn't see, a pitch where in the pitch is just there's nobody there. It was everyone's got to do their job and everyone's got to do their job at the right time. And I thought actually the defensive line for all of that lead up, I thought they were okay. And so I give them a C.
I don't know if I would give them. I would put them at a D. I do think I agree with your point about like the defensive line at least has a responsibility to take the middle out of the way. But then if you're factoring in that they're playing, Cooper McDonald as a defensive lineman or a Vaikaho as a defensive lineman in certain packages, then, I think too many times the quarterback was coming out and there was like nobody within 5 yards of him. And
right. But are you really expecting Daniel Poco to be the guy who's out there with the QB?
I mean, whoever's got the contain, it could be a defensive end that has the contain on that. That's not there.
Yeah, I guess.
That's why I said it's tough with the way that they played that defense to know how to separate between a defensive line and a linebacker, and then even having Celestine and Ratcliffe basically playing outside linebackers. Like it's hard to know exactly to bunch them all together.
Like what was their responsibility?
Yeah. Aaron Taylor, he does the CBS Sports Network. He's a TV analyst, right? He does multiple Aztec games every year. So he's seen San Diego State a bunch over the last few years. And at one point, I don't remember if it was the second quarter or the third quarter, he literally said, the Aztecs have no idea what's going on right now. And he's obviously talking about the defense. Like, you would never think you would hear a San Diego State defense, an analyst saying that they have no idea what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And that's how it felt during that 6 straight touchdown drives.
Yeah.
is that everything Air Force wanted to do, they did.
Yeah.
And I wrote this in my article about, searching for answers during the bye week. Like, they only had 3 missed tackles in the game. If your first tackler doesn't reach the ball carrier until 7, 8 yards down the field, then you're still giving up 8, 9 yards a carry in those circumstances. And missed tackle is not really going to do you any good if
Yeah.
the player isn't there to miss a tackle.
Right.
So, they fixed that, but the rest of it was a lot to be left. And all 3 missed tackles were from linebackers or whatever. Like Zyrus had 2 and Cooper McDonald had 1. So moving to linebacker, I think linebackers, because of what I just mentioned, if you want to say the linebackers are the ones that have that responsibility for contain or for keeping the quarterback in the pocket, I would give them an F.
Yeah, I get the linebackers. Yeah, I agree. I thought that their QB did whatever he wanted. Again, it is hard to know that. I thought it was interesting. They decided to go away from what they had done until like the game was out of hand. In the third quarter, they brought in a fourth linebacker. I thought it was interesting that they went away from what they had success of the years before and kind of used Marcus Ratcliffe, who's big. Me is good size there as that. Again, I think Aaron Taylor said it right. I mean, they really did have a hard time knowing where to be, whether that was or beating a block to get there. I don't know, but I think they had like three on Air Force's first possession. They had 3 tackles for loss, and a lot of those were on the outside. And the rest of the game they had none, and it was
I was gonna
just
say it was the only 3 of the game.
yeah, it was only 3 of the game, which was just crazy. So, and and they just after it was interesting. They stopped being competitive, and that's I think is the best way. I don't mean that they weren't trying. I just mean like what they were trying to do wasn't competitive. On the second drive, they had him at a fourth down. Larry or whatever his quarterback, he rolls to his right, throws across his body, and Barfield got lost in the shuffle and just didn't see the guy who was right next to him. But
He
after like
tripped.
he
He
tripped, right? He tripped,
tripped, and
right?
then
That's what I mean. Yeah, and you couldn't find him. That's what I meant. Like, yeah, he was stumbling. But after that, they weren't competitive. Like they weren't effective. I guess is what I mean. I just think it's the place. So I gave the linebackers an F, and the same thing with the safety. I thought that it's again hard to see. It seems like the person who should be stopping them was a safety on a lot of those passes. Again, sometimes somebody else is supposed to have them, and they're the ones who blow the coverage, and it just happens to be the guy in the back end who's around them. It's hard to believe that they called the defense that was like double teaming the pass. So, it seemed like Devon Celestine missed on a few opportunities. Post game, Coach Hoke said that they just didn't have good eye discipline, which I think means that you're watching the run set up instead of watching your man. And so I just thought, again, Barfield makes that play. San Diego State's up. They get the ball back. They stop on a fourth down. Maybe they're feeling good. They get some momentum going the other way. The offense has a different, possession. Who knows what happens? But it didn't work out. So I gave them that.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said about they didn't go to the fourth linebacker till the second half. I think it was the second drive of the game they actually did go to four linebackers.
But they didn't stay with it. Then they didn't stay with it.
They didn't stay with it. They went back to the original look. But at the second drive, they had Vaikaho, Zyrus, Brady Anderson, and Cody Moon in there, I believe. So they did, but that was just that one drive, and then they went back to.
Okay, if I missed that one drive, but the way they did it consistently, I didn't see it until the end of the third.
But yeah, I mean, I think I was a bit surprised to see Eric Butler not start after the way he finished that Boise State game.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Hunter was the first guy that came in as a sub, even before Butler. And we know he's supposed to be one of the best tacklers on the team. So given the tackling issues, makes sense.
Especially because those guys are going to be the Air Force's offense forces you to make tackling
Right.
like on the edge. And he's also
Right.
known for
But I do think that, Celestine had a rough game. Definitely not his best performance on those two long passes. There was another play earlier in the game. Like it could have been even worse passing wise. There was one play where Des Malone blitzed off the edge, left the wide receiver, and the safety, I think it was Barfield, didn't get over in time. And
he threw it
Larry
right down.
saw it, threw the
Yeah,
ball out of bounds.
yeah, that was the one incomplete.
Yeah. And that should have been a touchdown. Easy touchdown. So like it could have been much worse. Now I think they scored a touchdown on that drive anyway, running the ball. So it's not like, it would have changed the score, but it would have made the passing stats look even worse. I don't know. It was just, Noah tumbling on that play where I think it was Rosnos. Nobody picked him up. Josh Hunter, unfortunately, and we talk about PFF metrics all the time about it being, not the most accurate and not the most. So Josh Hunter got credited for giving up that pass.
I thought that was the funniest part of your article.
Yeah, and obviously I guess PFF, like, they don't hear the coach press conference and know it was a corner, and the corner didn't line up. So it's like, is it the
Or
corner that gave it?
they
Somebody
don't
has
really
to
watch
get it.
the game.
Yeah, somebody had to get it right, and it was Hunter who did a great job of getting over there and tackling the guy to prevent the touchdown, at least for one play. But yeah, overall,
It's
I
the
think
problem with statistics.
right,
He,
especially
he
the
recorded
way
the
that
tackle, so he was the guy who was there.
if we want to look into the future and the Hawaii game, I think the biggest personnel difference you could see is at safety. I think you could see Eric Butler starting for Celestine. I think you could potentially see Barfield move into Aztec. That's been spoken about in the offseason. You could see Josh Hunter in there if Barfield moves to Aztec. I think some things might need to change because the safeties, out of all the positional groups, you think we've talked about the safeties having the best quality depth because of some of the recruiting that they brought in. You also got two Power Five guys, transfers, who didn't start at the Power Five level, but they were recruited at the Power Five. Just Deshaun McEwen and JD Coffey. So maybe if they feel like Ratcliffe is not going to be starting next game, that maybe JD Coffey goes to Aztec. Max Garrison hasn't been suiting up. I'm not sure if they decided to redshirt him this year because he did get it banged up and missed early part of the season, and maybe they just figured it'd be best to use a redshirt. I don't know that. There's opportunities there at safety to give some other guys some chances, and I think you could see that starting with Hawaii.
Yeah. So I'll just wrap this up with the grade. I thought that the corners had a D. I didn't think that they helped a lot either in stopping the run, and then even the times where they just would like drop back and pass, they like did. One of the Brady Anderson ones where it doesn't matter. The thing. But as far as changes, man, I think another change that could happen, I'd be interested to see is it doesn't seem like they're getting their, I guess, weak side linebacker. They're not getting what they're wanting because they keep rotating guys through there. I'd be curious to see if Cooper McDonald could play there, and you could start Trey White at that position there. I think that's a change that they can make. I think the defensive line rotation is what it is. I thought Sammy 94's played a little bit more, but I think the other question that they have to ask themselves is, because I could hear Coach Maddox, I would wager that he got Air Force's play call correct, like who was actually going to get the ball. I think I would say easily at a 75% clip, because he would yell, "It's going to be a dive! It's going to be a dive! It's watch this guy in this play." It's one thing to be able to like know what the other team's doing. It's another thing to be able to, for your players to be able to execute it. And I think the question that they have to answer this week is whether or not is which one is it? Is it just a matter of their players need to play better, or they may not have the players to be able to execute what they're calling? And I think they have to figure that out. Last year, they were able to make a couple of moves. They brought Zyrus off of the bench and started him. Well, he's their best defender now, or one of their best defenders, definitely best linebacker. And so like that's an easy change, but is that same kind of thing? Is there somebody else that can do that for going forward? So I think that'll be really interesting to see. I think the other thing that they have to figure out, and I know everyone is there's definitely a Chicken Little perspective from the fan base with everything that's going on, and anybody who expects that they and I get it, you expect that they should look better. That yeah, maybe you shouldn't beat a top 25 team or a top 30 team every week. I definitely think there's fans who think that they should be beating top 30 teams every week, and the fact that they haven't is a huge. I don't share that opinion, but I think the other part that they have to ask themselves is that question: is that like, did they just happen to play a UCLA team that's almost ranked, an Oregon State team that is ranked, and an Air Force team that is a couple wins away from being in the rankings, and that they couldn't compete with them because they're not a top 25 team, and that now they're playing other teams and they're going to be able to be more competitive doing what they're doing, or if they do need to have wholesale changes, because the danger with the wholesale changes is there's already assignment errors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you mix it up even more, are you going to keep having these things where you just don't pick up a receiver on the outside or in the slot like we saw against UCLA? That's why they get paid the big bucks, man. They have to have those answers, and it starts this week against Hawaii. I don't think that there's any ands if or buts about it, man. They need to get a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's imperative not just to beat Hawaii, but to beat Nevada, go 2-0 in October.
Yeah.
Before and after you bye.
Yeah.
Because the last 4 games of the season, you have to go full force and go to 8-4 and hope that the teams ahead of you lose. Obviously, if you're trying to still fight for a conference championship, it looks very, very slim. I'm not trying to say that it's likely or any possibility, but like that's how you got to look at it from 2 games, beat these 2 games, go into another bye, and come out of there hopefully playing your best football as you get into your Final Four. I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people over the last few days since the Air Force game about what to do personnel wise, right? Like there's this notion that the season, by some, and could be valid, that this season is you're not going to win the conference championship. The bowl game isn't as important, and that you should play younger guys that have 2-3 years left in the program to see what they've got. And, and that starts with either quarterback, that starts with running back, it starts with, safety, especially since we just talked about a few. And that notion that if you play younger guys, maybe you're saying basically the season is lost and that you're not going to win many games. And I heard from some people that maybe the younger guys are actually better and could actually help you win more games. So obviously that's yet to be determined. And I don't know if the coaching staff is ready to go there yet and say, we're going to play younger guys. We'll look for the future because they could be potentially playing for their jobs. That's an interesting dichotomy to look at coming off of the bye week.
Well, we should get into that. I like the pond between the good one, the good grade. But the only other interesting part that I would add to that is young players are only able to transfer to a better opportunity if they have game film.
Yeah.
That's the other wild card to all of this is, you play them young and you start going that young route, and you've just given them 6 weeks of tape to go, and any NIL collective to go out there and say, hey, let's get this guy off of San Diego State. They were building him up for your next year. You know what I mean? So I think that even given that, like, I think you got to play your best players. If they make a bowl this year, and I know there's a contingent of the fan base who doesn't care about the bowls, but that San Diego State's able to get into, but I just think they don't understand college football, quite frankly, and the landscape of what it is. I think it would be huge. And I think that's, again, I love the way that you said it. If they can go 2-0 in October and they're sitting there at 500 and you have your last 4 games, you need 2 to be able to get bowl eligible. who knows what hectic stuff has taken place in the conference standings and whatever. I think it's huge, and if you just look at the way teams have been able to jump from into like national contention, and typically a group of five is able to do that with sustained success and getting to another bowl and allowing this to be, a year that you just don't really think about 5 years from now. I think, I think like a 2018 or something like that, I think could be really good. But let's wrap this up, sir. What do you think about the special teams?
I have him as an A.
Yeah, let's go.
Jack Browning, record-setting 61-yard field goal. After making, I think, both attempts from 56 that didn't count. Right? The second one might have hit the goal
One
post.
hit a post. There was a in the
But I thought the announcer said it hit the post and went forward, or did it not? That camera angle.
In my recollection of it, it bounced off. But
Okay. Then never mind. But yeah, 61-yarder. His punting looked a little bit back to his usual ways with his average. Maybe his hamstring injury that Coach Hoke referred to after Boise had cleared up. But yeah, I mean, that was definitely, anytime you set a record with a 61-yard field goal, you don't miss any field goals because he didn't attempt any others. Had a good punting day. I feel like, the special teams coverage units, Air Force doesn't really return punts, so there wasn't a lot there. I'd give him an A.
Yeah, I give him an A too. I'd say, in the press box, I was sitting just to I was probably like the 45-yard line. And when it comes to the Browning kick, I was on the 45-yard line towards San Diego State's, the goalpost. And, when they got that false start, I'm looking at Hoke thinking like, okay, here's going to be Tobin Odell. He's going to get his second pass of the season, and they're going to send out, and he just kind of kept them out. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it was just the strangest thing to have a field goal kicker when I'm sitting on the 45-yard line be to my right. You understand? Like it's just a strange setup. And obviously he was in San Diego State territory when where they were set up for. And he nailed it, man. I mean, he absolutely nailed it. It was good from 70. I mean, it was really, really good. And I thought that was really special. I thought he had a good punt that, it was kind of funny because you remember that Matt Ariza's big game took place at Falcon Stadium last year or 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
So the buzz in the press box was, what's up with San Diego State kickers? Matt Ariza, he was like, they have great games up here and, all that kind of stuff. But Falcon Stadium record, San Diego State record, Mountain West record. It was a great kick, and it, it was unfortunate that it didn't seize them any momentum. But Coach Hoke said post game there was wind blowing in that direction, and that was absolutely where the wind was going really, really strong when that storm came around. But also that he's seen Jack Browning do it, and in warm ups at Snapdragon, watch where he's kicking from. They're really deep kicks. Has a powerful leg and was able to get that done. But I also had him as an A. I thought they did just fine. Obviously the punt return unit didn't get a lot of work, and so it's hard. Those explosive plays there, kicking at elevation. They didn't have a ton of opportunities to return. Ken Christian could have done better on one that he got wrapped up in guys that I think were blocked, and he just kind of went into them, but nothing major there. But I thought, Jack Browning had a great game. I definitely think that like the most enduring moment from that kick in terms of my own memory will be watching it from the 45-yard line and a kicker to my right to get all the way across the field. And it was, I mean, you knew it was good. As long as he was left and right, like distance wise, like from the moment he kicked it, it was just like a boom, like he shot it out. It was really impressive.
Yeah, definitely a positive thing to take away from a rather ugly game. Otherwise, that's our grades for you guys. We'll be right back with an interview with SDSU soccer head coach Ryan Hopkins. episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. We want to welcome back head coach of San Diego State soccer, Ryan Hopkins, to the podcast. So far the team has played 9 games. They're 6-1-2. Outscored opponents 24-1, and they're ranked 22nd. So why has the team, first of all, thank you for coming on, but why has the team been so successful in non-conference play so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, been a collection and a team effort. I think the guys are really bought into each other and, understanding that, individual accolades are going to come from team success and, their willingness to cover for each other, their willingness to share, in goals and different things like that, maybe show up on stat sheets, has been impressive. And I told them, today in film, we did our film, edits from the Stanford game. And I said, in my 20 years of coaching, and I've had some pretty good teams, I don't know that I've seen a bigger collection of guys willing to do that in a game, really doing whatever it takes to be successful. And I think it's, the biggest way I can sum it up is, I think we all know a lot of capable people in our life, but probably far few people that are willing to do what it takes to get a job done. And I would say this group is just willing to do whatever it takes to get results, however it looks.
You started conference play last week. I played 2 games. As you moved into the conference season, what was your overall message to the team?
Yeah, I mean, you're in the NCAA tournament right now. You look at the RPIs, and I think Top Drawer Soccer did a tournament projection, and all 6 teams were in the NCAA tournament. Our lowest RPI in the conference is 33 right now. So it's just that feeling of, you're playing knockout style games. And you have to be ready. The games come so fast and furious that, you're going to have peaks and valleys throughout. And the job is to not let your valleys be, too bad. And because there's going to be peaks right around the corner and vice versa. So just continuing to be steady, continue to stick to our identity and our principles. And the results will come, from that.
In the first conference game, you surrendered just the first goal and also suffered your first defeat against Cal. But the Aztecs had so many chances in that game, including point blank header in just the last couple of moments of that game. I mean, how frustrating was that result?
Yeah, soccer is a stupid sport is what I would say about that. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Honestly, we felt like that second half especially was one of our better halves of soccer this entire year. And it just, credit to, I thought Cal did a good job of bending, not breaking. I thought their goalkeeper stood on his head. And you're going to run into that. That's our sport. Sometimes I think you get frustrated, or you get a little bit more worried if you're not creating chances and not, in your opponent's end a ton. So, I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, of course we would have loved to have the win and another shutout, but that's the nature of this conference, is that every game, everybody can beat everybody. It doesn't matter on any given day. So, I think it was just an important lesson, but I think also for our guys, it was important just to get the campaign off and going. Obviously it's always a step up when you step into the conference. And those teams had played, 2 games already. Now they're 4 games into it. So I think it was important also for us just to understand the pace, understand the intensity, understand the athleticism that everybody, creates. And I thought it really prepared us, quite honestly, for Sunday. And I think that's what I talk about, those peaks and valleys, to come back from all those moments of adversity where it could maybe sink some teams, to come back and play a team like Stanford and, play to a standstill for a long stretches of that game just shows the mental toughness and abilities of this group.
Yeah, you're leading right into the next question. The Cardinal hadn't been shut out in 18 straight matches.
Yeah.
but to be able to do that, with, I think, with enough games, I think San Diego State can claim to have, one of the nation's top defenses for sure. But I mean, how encouraging was that for them to not, as you said, make that valley even further? But I mean, that's a pretty high peak to have to come and match up to. They were ranked 6th at the time, 10th now, and to be able to go and get a result there.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time of, that adversity is a gift, and, it all depends on how you respond to it and how you use it. And I thought we used the adversity from Thursday night, obviously, to know that like we were not leaving that field without a point at minimum. And I think that was the statement that the group made. That's been a big, goal of ours for the whole year, is to not have a losing streak. And, I think the guys took that upon themselves to make sure we were not leaving that field without a point. Man, I think we were actually the closest team to probably scoring between the two teams. There's a mad scramble like 3 minutes into the game. And, we felt like we started that game unbelievably. And I turned to Adrian, my assistant, like 10 minutes into the game. And I just said, well, Adrian, at this point, the guys are prepared. I don't know what's going to happen over the next 80 minutes, but they're prepared to play, and, we'll see where the result comes. And I think that was a really good feeling. I knew that early into the game. I was like, the guys are ready. Soccer's a weird sport. Anything can happen out there. But at the end of the day, I knew the guys were ready. They were prepared. They were ready to compete. And there's no better feeling as a coach, right? Like that's all we can do at that point. And I got to learn to let a little more control go. But I knew at that point, I was like, our guys are ready, and that's all you can ask for.
The team has been at home for a while, hasn't been out on the road since August. Was that a scheduling anomaly, or was that kind of intentionally done to, keep them close to home as you prepared for the conference schedule?
Yeah, a bit of both. We had ended some home and homes, throughout my first 2 years, and this obviously being kind of my third real year of, those home and homes kind of ending. And it just worked out. I think a lot of people want to come to San Diego, and, we're also, I think in my career, I'm 15-1 in non-conference home games, I think. So, the confines of the sports deck have been very friendly to us, and we really enjoy playing here. We also academically, we felt like we traveled a lot in the early part, and then we hit these Pac-12s, and the guys were really behind academically. So honestly, it was a little bit of focus on that too, to make sure we were setting those guys up for success in the classroom, too, knowing that these Pac-12 weekends are pretty long, especially this one we're about to embark on. So yeah, a combination of all those things, and just being able to be supported by the administration to bring some teams in too. That's been a big part of it.
As you're getting into the meat of the conference schedule, is there one area that you'd like your team to improve on the rest of the season?
We gave up one goal, so we need to be better in that area. That's for sure. I don't want to see another goal go in this year. That's kind of the challenge that I told them. I think 5's the NCAA record for a season. So, for me, why not? Why not dream big and go for that, and see where we end up. So I think obviously that's what we really, really want to focus on. And then I think just continuing to sustain our attacks, continue to play to our principle on the attacking side of things. It's this conference, it's really hard to score goals. Everybody is athletic, everybody's organized. If you're not in the first game, you get another crack, to figure out what you did wrong in the first game. So even the second games are even harder. So I think, just continuing to keep those guys confident, even if some of the goals aren't coming, just knowing that, hey, as long as we're creating chances, the goals will, eventually come from that.
Earlier, you said that every game is an NCAA game in conference. To your point, the Aztecs and Stanford, who are the two highest ranked teams, are also at the bottom of the standings presently in the conference. Just another kind of reminder to me, how challenging is Pac-12 soccer?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I was on the interview with the Pac-12 network earlier today, and it's, the bottom team, you're at 32 in the RPI. And I think it's a interesting year. I think the last 2 or 3 years we've had super elite teams, with Washington and Oregon State. I think both would have been the number one seed the last 2 years, Washington going to the final, Oregon State going to the Elite Eight. So you've had these super, super elite teams. And then I think you had Cal and ourselves and even UCLA a little bit that, we'd had new coaches within the last 2-3 years, and it was going to take, some a year or two to build the programs up to that level. And I think you're seeing the combination of all of those things where maybe Oregon State and Washington have dropped, slightly from 1 to maybe 10. Stanford is always, who they are. And then I think you're seeing the rise, certainly of Cal, San Diego State, and, UCLA kind of getting back to where they, traditionally have been. So I think it's just a combination of all those things. And now we're all anywhere from 10 to 20, 25 in the country. And I think, if we continue to not beat each other up too bad, I was laughing with, Jamie Clark, we were texting and we're like, you know what, maybe we just tell the conference everyone gets 5-5 and then we all go to the NCAA tournament and then we'll all meet in the finals and we'll battle it out from there. So, but I think it could happen. It honestly could happen. I think it's, it's that close. I mean, you look at the score, Cal had a chance, had a penalty in the 81st minute against UCLA, they missed it, and UCLA goes down and scores, and it's 2-0, and that game could have been 1-1 very easily. So there's the margin for error in this conference is absolutely zero. And so it's every game is, you just have to treat it like its own little season and then get ready for the next one.
So tell us more. I mean, you guys are about to head on the road, Pacific Northwest. Yeah. You get Washington, you get Oregon State, who's the only team that's beaten Stanford this year, first in the conference presently. I mean, what challenge awaits you as you go on this road trip?
Yeah, I think Oregon State is a very seasoned seasoned group. They've got a new coach this year. Came over from Penn State, and I think he's brought a lot of defensive solidarity to them. So they're defending in a I think much more disciplined, much more aggressive way. And they probably have the most elite striker in the country, right now, Logan Farrington, who is honestly won a couple games on his own for them. So they're always a threat, really hard trip. You have to fly to Seattle and then we drive 4 hours to Corvallis and then drive back to Portland and fly home. So the travel wears on you as well in that scenario. And then, I think Washington on a Thursday night. I mean, Washington can beat anybody in the country, on their day. They've had some unbelievable results. They're, obviously lost a lot of big time players over the last couple of years. And it's hard to, I think in our sport right now, hard to continue to sustain those kind of losses and not have a small dip. But yeah, they're certainly as capable as anyone in this conference of winning games. They've beaten Portland, who was top 5 in the country at the time. They went to Stanford and got a result. They won at Cal, last week. And, so they've had some great results this year too. And they won at Indiana. So they, I think both games are going to be fantastic battles. And we're looking forward to them.
Pac-12 Network, everybody can watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you return home, you get a crosstown tussle with USD at Snapdragon Stadium. Highly anticipated match. How is the school trying to promote that event so you can get some people out there at Snapdragon Stadium for that? Yeah,
absolutely. We're trying to do our part, both teams. I think there was a stat I saw maybe a couple of weeks ago on Twitter when we were both in the, top 25. They've obviously fallen out and we've stayed in, but I think it was the first time ever in the coaches poll history that San Diego State and San Diego were in at the same time. So I think it just shows you the level of soccer in our city. I think both teams have a decent amount of kids from San Diego. So I think that's exciting to put on a show, for the local community. I think it is a strong soccer community. So it's exciting to put that show on and, hopefully there's some kids in the crowd that are dreaming of playing for both teams one day and then they get to reach those dreams. I think like CJ Fodry for us is a great example of that last year of a guy that was able to do that. So we're really excited just because both teams I think are having great seasons and it's going to be a big time battle. And quite honestly, sometimes these games come down to at-large bids. They look at, non-conference head-to-head. So I think from that perspective, we're both, I think they're like 45 in the RPI, something like that. So it's got added importance, from that perspective. So it's another one of those games where I feel it's an NCAA tournament, type of game on the biggest stage. So Yeah, we've done a lot of social media. We're going to do a couple appearances. We're having an alumni night that goes with it. They're pumping it out to their students. We're hoping to get really good student support. So our goal is, definitely to break our attendance record. Last year it was about 2,700, and hopefully we can shoot for the mid threes and low fours would be phenomenal.
Yeah, USD had, I think, one of the best 2-game results early in the year when they went on the road and beat Seattle,
Yeah.
who's really ranked, and then defeated Washington. What do they do so well that's going to be a challenge for you guys? I know you're focused on this weekend's games,
Yeah.
but looking ahead to USD, what is it what challenge do they present on the field?
Come on, as a coach, we're already looking for 4 games ahead.
Yeah.
Sometimes we got to give the scout to the team tomorrow, and I'm like, who are we playing? I'm already so far ahead. They're they play in they got a very, very athletic older team. They've been together for 2 or 3 years. Obviously, I respect Brian Quinn immensely and their whole staff. I think they've done a phenomenal job of, rebuilding that program since COVID, and carrying on. It's had a rich tradition, too. And they've got a fantastic, front, attacking 3 or 4 players. Mason Tunbridge is, I think one of the top attacking players on the West Coast. They'll be, obviously they beat Washington. They're a Pac-12, level team, and in my opinion. So, and they open up conference with a big win, so we want them to keep winning, and help our RPI when we play them. And like we said, it's an NCAA tournament type team, and it's the type of game you kind of have to win to make sure that you, when it comes to that committee room, if you're in those discussions, that you have that one on your resume to help you a little bit.
I asked you about a couple players, Coach. Sophomore Austin Brummett. He was one of the key recruits last year when SDSU had the number 1 overall rated class. He's already doubled his assists, already doubled his more than doubled his goals, doubled assists from his freshman year. I mean, the times that I've seen him, he looks like one of the most electric players in the country. What have you seen from Austin this year and his growth in his game?
Yeah, I mean, Austin coming into last year, not a lot of people knew he was coming off two pretty significant foot injuries. And so he almost hadn't played soccer, regularly for about 10 months. So, we knew last year was going to be a struggle, and, we felt like it was good to just, get his feet wet and understand college soccer and, have him go through what that felt like. But we knew he was not at 100%, last year. So we really focused on, different things with him physically, and obviously soccer wise throughout the spring. And then, into the summer, he played on a really good USL2 team. Yeah, I think for us, he sets the whole tone of our team. You don't talk about your forwards, honestly, very much about their defensive work, but I think the work of him and Alex, really sets the tone for the rest of the group. And I say it all the time in video. I almost try and show every video session, one defensive play from them. And I just say it all the time. I said, listen, you guys can be, if our 9 and 10 are the ones doing this kind of defensive work, then we can be an elite team. And we'll go really, really far once we get to knockout soccer, and goals are hard to come by regardless. And then he's just, he's like a fox in the box. He's fantastic in the air. I think he scored 3 or 4 goals. 3 or 4 of those goals have been in the air. He kind of relishes contact. He's like kind of that old 80s, English Division 1 type of forward, where he doesn't mind knocking his head together and, kind of relishes contact, but also has a very skillful side and very soft feet, to his game too. So yeah, it's just, he wasn't even starting, early in the year, and, just put his head down and kept working and kept improving. And when he got his chance, he was ready and he took it. And that's what I say to all the guys. It was a great interview with Tom Brady, the other day, and Tom Brady was talking about, how he replaced Drew Bledsoe. And, the reason he was able to replace Drew Bledsoe is that he was ready. Like, it wasn't like he was waiting till Drew Bledsoe got hurt to be prepared. Like, he was prepared the whole time. And, and I think that's a great lesson for young players of like, obviously you can be disappointed that you're not playing. But what are you doing to make sure you're prepared when your chance comes? And credit to Austin, he's taken his chance and hasn't looked back.
You mentioned the pressure that your forwards put. Kind of reminds me, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but it reminds me of the way Team Mexico plays. And it's such a fun brand of soccer.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exhausting. But we try and make sure the guys are periodized during the week. But yeah, I would say, Bielsa's been a big influence on us, obviously from Argentina. I think, yeah, Mexico, as well, Liverpool, kind of the Red Bull teams, is really where a lot of our philosophy comes from. And it's about turning, defense into attack very close to our opponent's goal. So I would say those are the teams where, really, really follow. And, it's kind of funny that the guys pick up on it now and they're, oh, Red Bull did this weekend. They tired Bayern this weekend, then they're watching. It's really funny now because then they understand, like, when these players leave, like Leipzig or Salzburg, and they're like, oh, Holland was at Salzburg and now he's at Man City. It's like they understand why. They understand why they're seeing, it ahead of time. Szoboszlai at Liverpool now, obviously coming from Leipzig. So I think Benjamin Sesko is going to be the next big one off the Red Bull factory line. So it's kind of fun for them to see that way, and it kind of gets them. I would say most kids this day, soccer is more accessible than ever, but, I don't know how many are actually watching it as like students of the game, as much enjoyment, and either one's fine. But I think it's fun to see our guys become, more students of the game and, really taking to that Red Bull philosophy for sure.
Top drawers, they ranked defender Reed Sproat as the 45th best overall player in the country. How has his transition gone since transferring in from Oakland?
Phenomenal. Yeah, pretty seamless. We call him the Terminator because he doesn't really talk too much. We were laughing the other day. He like smiled in a team meeting, and like we almost had to stop the team meeting because it was just such an anomaly. But it's just like it's what you would want in a center back. I think, like, yeah, I'm a big Man United fan, as most people know, and he reminds me of a lot of like a Nemanja Vidic. Just does the job. Will put his head in some scary, scary places, and yeah, doesn't really care how it looks. He's very much a leader by example, and doing the job. And I think he's every bit deserving of those accolades. And yeah, he was a guy. I mean, he could have taken pro soccer opportunity, but he's like, what, there's more things I want to learn. I think you can I think you can make me better. I think this conference can make me better. I want to compete. He was a four-time all conference player at Oakland University. And it seems like San Diego State's had a lot of luck with transfers from Oakland with Brandon Parrish as well on the basketball team. So maybe we got to look into that connection a little more. But yeah, he's just done and been a phenomenal job. And really all of the grad transfers have been great. They've been exactly what we needed to kind of fill in the youngness of our group and kind of bring a maturity and an experience. And they've all been phenomenal.
Our last two questions are about a topic we talked a lot about first interview, MLS coming to San Diego and Right to Dream. Just this past week, they announced a location for the Right to Dream Academy. What are your thoughts about where they went with and what their plan is for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect for us. Very, very close. And, I think you could see the ideas that they had behind it to make it more of a campus than just a training center. I think they're going to take over the old hotel there and, turn that into dorms and, different things. And you can see the model. Obviously, we talked last time about my experience in Ghana. And you can see the model, that they have there. And, obviously it's kind of one of those things where let's bring it here and see if we can build it, the same way that they've done there. And so I can't wait. I mean, I'm so excited, I think they're going to unveil the official name here in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I thought for us, proximity wise, it's going to be great. We're hoping to have a really strong relationship with them to be able to watch trainings, have them come out and watch our players, hopefully play the second team at some point, obviously, hopefully be a pipeline for, bringing academy kids, to play here as well. So we've had all those discussions with their leadership and, we're really excited for their willingness to engage in us. And, I think it's going to be very, very fruitful for both sides.
Yeah, we talked about Austin Brummett. He played for the Seattle Sounders and New York Red Bull Academy teams before San Diego State. Do you kind of following along your thought process? Should we anticipate players making that few miles west move from Right to Dream to San Diego State in the coming years?
That's the hope. Yeah, I think that's the hope. I think on both sides of it, we met, with some of their top leadership, and I think the message, outside of soccer is, they still are trying to prepare kids for life after college too, and I think ultimately that's the message that we're trying to send here. At the end of the day, I tell our recruits all the time, it's like, listen, I'm not a club team. I'm not a professional team. I'm a university. So my job is to get you a excellent college degree and help you along that pathway. And then, help prepare you for life after college with, skills and character, that's going to sustain, a very, very good life. And I think we do a great job of that. Like, they were blown away by our Aztecs Going Pro life skills program. It was kind of interesting when I met with the COO. There was a girl that had graduated from Right to Dream, and she had played at Tennessee, and she came, she was doing an internship here, and she was blown away by some of those items, playing at an SEC school. She was like, I've never heard of coaches that are willing to do this, coaches that have these resources with the life skills program. So I thought that was a really good relationship and connection to have, and to have her, talk in that light, just, I think, shows how special San Diego State is, shows how, we are preparing our kids for life outside of soccer. And obviously soccer is a big part of it, but, it's a very small fraction of their life. So I think, they're very much the same way, that they're doing. So there's great, I think, synergy behind both those ideas. And I think that's why the partnership makes so much sense.
Yeah, I believe the official announcement of the name, the crest, and the colors are October 20th at Snapdragon. So it is coming up in a couple weeks.
It'll be interesting, the colors that they've chosen too.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have any inside sneak peek at that, or?
Nothing that I know. I just, like I said, I'd say it'll be interesting what they end up doing. I know Tom Penn is, teased out, should it be San Diego FC or FC San Diego? So I think there's, some excitement behind that. But I think whatever it is, I'm sure they're going to set jersey sales, and hopefully we can knock Messi off his perch a little bit with his jersey sales right now. So I can't wait to see him come here, man. That game's going to be never seen Messi live, so hopefully he's still kicking in the league by 25. That'd be awesome.
I think every San Diegan that's interested in MLS is looking forward to that too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coach, good luck this weekend. Thank you for taking the time as always, and we'll see you this Snapdragon Stadium October 14th. So for those listening, if you haven't gotten your tickets, go get them.
All right. Awesome, guys. Thank you as always. Appreciate the support of our whole department. Obviously, especially men's soccer. But just thanks for all you do for our athletic department and university.
Absolutely.
Yep. Paul, that was our interview with Ryan Hopkins, head coach of soccer. It's the second time we linked up with him this summer, or the first time was this summer. I believe it was the first episode of our rebranding of the SDSU podcast. So now that the season has going, they're 9 games in. It's really cool to hear from him and how he thinks the season has gone. They've had a really good season. They're ranked. But they're, 2 games into the Pac-12 season with a loss and a draw. They've got 2 huge games just coming up on the road now. And then, the USD game at Snapdragon. What were your thoughts about our conversation with him?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great point about, it's just funny that you brought up that it was our rebrand. Technically, we could have kept it as the SDSU football podcast and just put a little accent. You know what I mean? So getting back to our
to you.
Yeah, exactly. Get our little. So we're doing another football podcast. No, but I think Coach Hobson's great. I'll be honest. I see if I'm right on this. You are much more adept at your soccer knowledge, and you follow it. I definitely follow it on the national level and enjoy all of the Gold Cup and World Cup and Nations Leagues and all that stuff, but am not as onto the club scene of it and things of that nature. Although I like following the Cholos and been looking forward to FC San Diego FC, whatever that is. But Yeah, I thought that, just like for a moment there, he just started talking soccer when I was asking him about the style that San Diego State looks like. And that's what they really do reminded me. They remind me of the Mexican national team and the fact that you have the ball anywhere, they're coming at you when the goalie is just kind of doing that setup little thing that he can where you're not going to get much time, and you see the turnovers. And I think it's especially important at the level that they play at, because at the highest levels, defenders miss pass. Somebody's able to get into a passing lane and they get possession that way. But I think it's especially important at there. But I guess the question for you, how fun was that part where you started talking soccer, and how he lost me? How well could you follow all of the references?
A lot of the names he mentioned, a lot of from like the Man United days, Vidic, and like then he spoke about some of the guys like that had moved on from smaller teams to bigger teams. I think I got most of it. I to be honest, I haven't watched their matches this year just because just the scheduling and looking at where they're streamed and stuff. So it's hard for me to kind of equate that to what I've seen from them particularly. But I think your reference about Mexico and him saying that like we press, and they've only given up 1 goal in 9 games, and to do that you need a good goalkeeper, you need a good back line, but you also need forwards that can help out defensively. And him talking about how they're 9 and 10 are really good defensively as well. Austin Brummett, one of those, I think speaks to that, wanting to help out in that. They've scored 24 goals, but if you take out that one, that was 12.
I was going to say, that's a little misleading stat.
9 games, or 12 goals in 8 games, which is still, 1.5 goals a game. It's not bad, but I think as you're getting into Pac-12, they've scored 0 in 2 games in the Pac-12. And so that's when I asked him, like, what would you like to do better? I think scoring more goals is paramount to being able to not just get draws, but to get 3 points and move up in the Pac-12 standings. So there's that balance we got to talk about like defending and all 11 guys being defenders or helping defend, but you also need to send guys forward to see if you can create more chances of scoring, because that's ultimately how you're going to win games.
Well, I think their style, I think they push forward pretty good, actually. It's just they have put so much pressure on their back line that to me is the interesting part of their ability to have such a clean slate that they've had so far. Because like I said, the space between the midfielders and the forwards and everybody, they're constantly just pushing, and you would just expect there to be big gaps that would be created because of that. But to this point, it hasn't been a huge issue for them. But I did think, actually, in answer to the way Coach Hopkins answered that question, and I think he gave a little bit of his philosophy, right? Because in life, usually, we're limited in what you can kind of like focus on, right? That's always just a reality. And sometimes when you're trying to build a team, or you're trying to fulfill a task, or you're trying to do something, is it more important to shore up what you're not as great at, or is it more important to like double down on what you're great at and be great at something? And I think great arguments can be made for both sides of it, but he definitely answered, well, we want to give up even less goals. We gave up 1, and we want to get up fewer. And so I thought, okay, so he's a guy who is like, here's what you're great, here's what you're excelling at, now go be great at that. I thought it was interesting that, and I think I like, I enjoy talking with, I think, coaches who don't have weekly press conferences. Not that I don't enjoy talking to Coach Hoke and Coach Dutcher, but they just are more willing to like say, like five goals, like he said, is the record. Like, let's go chase those records. And it's like, I think that's really good. Like, I think people would absolutely want to like do that and think about that. But sometimes you're wondering, like, are the coaching staffs actually paying attention to those things and stuff? And so I thought thought it was an interesting approach that he is as a coach wants to go after and greatness as opposed to focusing on like, and obviously he's focusing on scoring goals, but just that he answered it that way. I thought I could have heard like 10 different things, responses to that question as I was reading it. And not one of them in my mind was, we've given up 1 goal. Let's give up 0 the next 9 games. It's like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, at first I thought he was gonna like say, "Oh, just kidding." Like,
Right.
But then he's serious, and then I love that they've got 9 matches remaining.
Yeah.
So, 3 goal. If they give up 3 goals in 9 matches, which would be 4 goals for the season, they would break the record. So it's possible. The schedule's not getting any easier though. Playing Pac-12 matches.
I'm gonna say, and all the games have been on the Aztec Sports Network, so it's an easy stream. They play late, so people who have a bunch of children who are tethered to their home, like this guy, it's a good watch. I'm telling you, they're an exciting team. Okay, but Austin Brummett, I'm telling you, like and the coach mentioned, like he didn't start at the beginning and just burst onto the scene. I'm telling you, he's a fun player, and not knowing exactly how exactly college is approached. He wears number 10. So he looks like a number 10 in a, you know what I mean? Like the best player on the team. And he played like it. I mean, he had a hat trick. And half of his goals came in 1 game, where he was, on a national team, like a top drawers, like top, team of the week kind of thing. Mountain West player of the or Pac-12 player of the week. So he just, he's a really exciting player. And you just like, he's one of those players that like plays with that shiftiness with the ball that it seems it's really hard for soccer players to have. So I think it's pretty interesting, just his development, and obviously that if he wasn't starting at the beginning of the year, kind of coached by a little bit by surprise. And then, I like the line about the Terminator, just, the school that is probably most famous for being the school that Kawhi Leonard came from, to have a Kawhi Leonard-esque center back. I thought that was pretty good. But I think that goes back to, that conversation about why they're able to, prevent a lot of those counters with as extended as they play, is because they got some dudes back there who can, hold their water, play aggressive, play smart.
So the game's at Washington Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific. It's on Pac-12 Washington. And then Sunday afternoon at noon, they play at Oregon State on Pac-12 Oregon. Do you know if those matches are going to be streamed on the Aztec Network?
I'm not 100%.
Doesn't appear so.
Okay. A lot of times you can get those games though, but I got the one on Thursday at 7.
The San Diego State's media press release says 5 p.m.
Oh, well, I don't know.
On the same sheet of paper on the left-hand side with the overall schedule, it says 7. So 7 is probably accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. But then, October 14th, the crosstown showdown at Snapdragon against USD. We're going to be in Hawaii covering the San Diego State Hawaii game. So unfortunately, we'll miss that one, but we will have, EVT will have presence there covering the game. So we'll look forward to seeing, that matchup. USD is a legit team as well. So it's not like maybe basketball fans are used to when we play USD in a non-Petco Park environment. Usually they're not, San Diego State's toughest matchup of the season. So we'll see.
Yeah, close it out with this idea. Like San Diego State's basketball team goes to the Final Four in Houston. You are on a cruise in the Mediterranean and you missed it. And now the most anticipated soccer match of San Diego State's men's soccer season, and you're in Hawaii, bro. How do you do this? I mean, how do you get the worlds to collide? I mean, this seems like the perfect time, to get out to Snapdragon, and to to be able to enjoy all the amenities of that, be able to see it, what is kind of becoming like unanimous as one of the top soccer pitches in all of sports. It's a great evening, and I'm with you. I'm going to be in Hawaii, so it's not like poor us, but man, what a great game to be able to get a concert. So I'll have to get out to the.
I mean, let's be real. The Final Four versus a regular season college soccer matchup may not have the same,
but it's just it's you in paradise, bro. That's all.
Yeah.
No, definitely not the same weight, but nonetheless, it's gonna be
well
great.
for anyone that is not going to Hawaii for the San Diego State Hawaii match, and is in San Diego, you could go out to Snapdragon Stadium at 7 p.m. The San Diego State Hawaii game will start at 8 p.m. San Diego time, so you could watch it on your phone for the first half, and then go to a post-game restaurant or bar and watch the second half of football after watching San Diego State USD at Snapdragon. So that is definitely a possibility if you want to catch both games at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm assuming at a couple of the screens that are like outside where they're showing college football games.
Yeah,
they'll have the Aztec game on. I mean that's a pretty cool place to be that bar that's there on the corner on I think it's the northeast side, and you'd be able to right where it's a sports experience, an SDSU sports experience that there are just not a lot of them. You'll have it, and I'm sure it's pretty memorable. Would absolutely be there if I hadn't already committed to getting out to Hawaii.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Hopefully you enjoyed the interview with Coach Hopkins and our grades for Air Force. We've got some interviews coming up in non-football sports as well after this one, so stay tuned for those. Thank you as always for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.